Hello, my name's Tim Shoebridge and welcome to this video. This is going to be a synthesizer video. I haven't done one of those for a little while. Now, a couple of months ago I put together a video. It was called some silly name like Mega Sequence Madness. It was basically showing a song that I had composed using patches that I created on the synth behind me here, the Novation Peak. And in the last couple of weeks I've been using a different synthesizer for a particular project, and I've been thinking to myself, I wonder what that song would sound like if I had used this other synthesizer and not the Peak. I wonder how different it would sound. And that's kind of got me thinking, because as a photographer, whenever I use a new camera or get a new lens and start using a new lens, the first thing I'll do is compare it, painstakingly test it and compare it to the other equipment that I own. And the reason why I'm doing that is because I want to make sure that when I take that camera out to shoot video or stills, that I know its limitations, that I know how to get the best out of it, what's going to be the best aperture to use for sharpness, etc. So it's something that I just naturally do with camera equipment, but I don't do it with synthesizers and musical instruments. The only time I've really done a comparison from one synth to another was actually when I was thinking of buying the Novation Peak. And the reason why I was comparing it to the Behringer Model D, was because I wanted to see if I could successfully emulate sufficiently well that kind of analog warmth that a true analog synthesizer provides. But generally speaking, I don't compare one synth to another. I sort of like treat them as their own thing. And actually, when we get to the end of this video, that'll be my conclusion as to what you really should be doing. But what I'm going to do for you now is I basically took that song, that Mega Sequence song that I wrote using the Peak, and I've recreated it using 4 other synthesizers that I own. So I've now got 5 variations of that song. And what I'm going to do for you now is to play you the song from start to finish, just the once. But what I've done is I've chopped it up every sort of like 4 bars, and I'll cycle around each of those 5 synthesizers. So one will be the Peak, 4 other synthesizers, cycle around them so you can hear the differences in those synths. And at the end of playing you the song, I'll do a reveal. I'll tell you which synthesizer was which. And I'll tell you some sort of like the conclusions basically about this exercise and what I think of it. So here's the song. Hope you enjoy it. Thanks very much for watching. Okay, so I think you'll agree with me that the sort of the variation in sound from one synth to the other is quite subtle sometimes, but it's also quite severe in some cases. And now listening back to that, having chopped it up and put it together like that, I really do realise that there are some levels that I haven't got right. Some parts are playing too loud or too quiet. Some have got too much reverb in, and I should have sort of like taken that back a bit. I realised that I could have done a better job of sort of like at least getting those levels better. But to be honest, I did spend a long time trying to recreate the patches on each of the synths. Now, not all of the synths have the same architecture as the Peak. Not all of them have got three oscillators. They haven't got the same waveforms. They don't have all of them inbuilt effects, or if they do have inbuilt effects, they don't have the same effects. So there's quite a difference from one synth to the next. But it's not just about the oscillators and like the sound generation capabilities. The most frustrating thing that I found was trying to match envelope generators and how they affect the filter of the synth. Trying to get that same sound across synthesizers. You've got exponential curves. You've got straight line. The way that the responses are of the envelopes, they vary so much from one synthesizer model to another. It's really been a very frustrating exercise. At a minimum, I spent 3 hours solid on one synthesizer trying to recreate the patches, and we're only talking about probably about 5 different patch sounds that I needed to recreate. In another instance, I spent the whole day just with one synthesizer trying very, very hard to get the patches to sound similar and failing, I have to say. And that's what I realised with this whole exercise is that it's a fruitless exercise. If you're trying to make one synthesizer sound like another synthesizer, then you're not getting the best out of that synthesizer, and that's just a fact. Now, what I did do with the song, obviously there's a drum track and there's some percussion, and that's got nothing to do with these synthesizers, so that was constant throughout the whole of the song. But there's also a point where I start to play some chords on the Peak, and not all of the synthesizers that I've used are polyphonic. So I took the decision to leave the chord sound, the original chord sound that I came up with on the Peak, and leave that alone. I'm not trying to emulate those chord sounds using a monophonic synthesizer. So all the other sounds, all the sort of like the sequency type sounds, have been variations from one synth to the next. So anyway, that's the sort of like the exercise over and done with. Now I need to tell you which synthesizer was which. Synthesizer A was the Novation Peak. Synthesizer B was the Behringer Model D. Can't see it, it's just behind me here in my rack. Synthesizer C, I have to check my notes here, was another Behringer synth. It's this one here that I've got on my desk. It's the DeepMind. I've got the DeepMind 12 desktop here. You could have easily just have used the DeepMind 6 because I used a maximum of 3 voices when I was trying to emulate the patches of the Peak. So that's synthesizer C. Synthesizer D is this. Let me get off the floor. This little guy. It's the Korg Monologue. Now, I should say just a couple of things about the Monologue. I used to own the Korg Minilog, which is its slightly bigger brother, the 4-voice polyphonic version. I had it for quite a long time, and I struggled with it to to get the kind of sounds that I like to get from an analog synthesizer. I like warm sounds. I like sort of like the full, rich sound of an analog circuitry, and the Korg Minilog didn't really give me that. It has its own unique character, it has its own sounds that it's good at, but those kind of aren't the sounds that I really sort of like warm to, if you'll excuse the pun. Fantastic synthesizer, looks very similar to this, just very, very slightly bigger. Fantastic build quality, looks beautiful, mini keys, but they really work well. The knobs and controls are very, very solid. Fantastic sequencer. It's a really great synthesizer. It's analog, but it's got that digital control. So you've got presets and the capability to automate with the sequencer. It's fantastic. Not for me in terms of sounds. Now, why have I got this in my hands? Well, I bought this a couple of months ago. I was going travelling, and I don't have something that I can take with me to make music on and compose music on. This monologue synth is completely portable. You can stick batteries in the back of it here and take it anywhere. So that's why I ended up buying it. Also because it was so ridiculously cheap. The prices have come down a lot. I actually got this one. This was what they call an open box B stock version, and I got it for well under 200 UK pounds. I just couldn't turn up the the opportunity to buy it for what you get. But I was concerned about that sound quality or the type of sounds I was going to get out of it as to whether I was really going to gel with it, because I didn't gel with the Minilog. And I have to say that going through this exercise of recreating that song on a number of different synthesizers, that this was the real surprise for me. I thought it was going to be, from my point of view, a bit of a failure, but actually I really liked the sounds that I was getting out of this. Yes, they are a little bit thinner in terms of, like, the weight of them compared to some of the other synthesizers that I've used, but I was really impressed with this, and pleasantly surprised. It doesn't have any effects on it. It's got a sort of a drive circuit here, but no effects on it, so I had to use outboard reverb to get the patches right that I wanted. So anyway, that was synth D. Last synth, even heavier, is this old thing. It's a quasi-MIDI polymorph. Well, that's how I pronounce it anyway, quasi-MIDI, like Quasimodo. Must be like 19 years old, this little guy here. It's really showing its age. I think you'll agree that in terms of the sound quality, it was the worst of all the synthesizers. But that's because it's really old. Yeah, it's DSP technology, virtual analog from back in the day. It does only have, well, okay, so it has 3 oscillators, but only one of the oscillators, oscillator number 1, is the only one that's got like sort of analog emulation capabilities to it. The other 2 are really for playing sort of like samples that are built into this machine. So I actually only used 1 oscillator, and so I've really sort of like crippled it from the word go with this exercise. It's playing just 1 single oscillator, whereas some of the other synths are playing 3. If they've got 3, I play 3. So that's one of the reasons why it doesn't sound as good as the other synths. But it's a dated, in terms of technology, it's dated. But that's doing this exercise with this synth. You wouldn't buy this synth or own this synth because you wanted to emulate an analog synthesizer and try and emulate patches that you're getting on a more versatile and powerful synthesizer. The whole purpose of this little unit here is that it is completely self-contained. It's got a certain genre in mind in terms of the music that it creates, and it's got fantastic sequencing capability. It's got lots of effects on board, but it's got its own certain style, and you need to use it with that style in mind. This synthesizer is really a part of my music history. I absolutely love it to bits. I really hope that I never ever have to sell it, even though it's superseded in terms of sound quality by literally everything else. It's just a lovely thing. One thing about it I'll just mention is although it does have onboard effects, it doesn't have a reverb, which I find really strange. I mean, reverb must be the most commonly used effect ever. It doesn't have one, so for this one as well I had to use an outboard reverb to sort of like play along with it. I think I overdid it on a couple of occasions with some of the patches, but that was it. This is synthesizer E. So anyway, that's the end. I hope it was entertaining or useful or interesting to you. If you've got any questions at all, then please leave them in the comment section, and I will be very happy to answer them. So thanks very much for watching. Until next time, thanks a lot.